Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast. My name is Chris Berry, and I'm going to be your host for today. Joining us, we have JJ Vega. JJ, how are you doing?
I am fantastic, my friend. How are you today?
I'm doing amazing, excited, enjoying my Friday afternoon, and looking forward to having a more of a conversation. Oh, obviously, we spoke last time kind of about your business and everything, but essentially dive a little bit deeper, we'll say. So before we kind
Perfect.
of dive into everything, your business, what your journey's been like, day-to-day basis, things along those lines, if you could just share a little bit about your business and what you help people with.
Yeah, so again, JJ Vega, very happy to be here. And I'm a developmental leadership coach. I specifically work with leaders in tech that might identify themselves as servant leaders. So people that tend not to have big decision-making power, but they're supporting teams that are working in very complicated emergent product environments. That basically means they're kind of building the railroad track as the train is going down the track. And this is very common in tech, especially in software, where you don't quite know what you're making until you make a little bit of it, show it to a customer, make a little bit more, show it to a customer, and then try to get in line with what creates value for them. Leaders in these environments are often under a lot of stress, and they also don't have many spaces to focus on their internal development. And that's really what my practice is for. So I support those leaders primarily through one-on-one coaching. And we work especially on the things that are blocking them internally from being able to really lead from a grounded and centered, presence-led place. So that's the elevator pitch, but obviously there's a lot more that goes into it than that.
Yeah, obviously, it's somewhat niche, we'll say. I was really going after
Mhm.
leaders in this industry, in this role. What made you want to get into this and however long ago it was? And if you can fill everyone in how long you've been doing this for again.
Yeah, so I've been in people leadership for 20 years, tech for 10 years. My practice is very new. I actually just started about 5 months ago. And I've been coaching in some way, shape, or form for much longer than that. I've been in education for a long time. So I basically started doing this because I wanted to be the coach that I wish I had about 10 years ago. So there's a version of JJ 10 years ago who was leader, who was leading in these types of spaces and was too proud to reach out for any kind of support or invest in his own development. So I was like a DIY personal development person. I read the books, I took the courses, I avoided paying any real money for anything. And I did okay to a certain extent. But I think I really struggled to break through some internal barriers that I had. I was repeating cycles of burnout. I was struggling to deal directly with some conflict, boundary setting. And in those environments, if you don't have effortless access to those types of resources, it can really be a detriment to your team and also to you. So that's really why I got into this, because I started coaching other folks and seeing the same patterns and realizing that maybe there could be an opportunity for me to step more fully into the type of role where I could offer that support, help them really thrive in their careers instead of doing what I did, which is, oh, this isn't working, new job, new role, new environments, trying to change the externals to fix the problem instead of addressing what was happening internally to make a move forward and even break through those barriers.
Yeah. So obviously you have a bunch of experience, right? 20 years and then 10 years. And then now more recently kind of going into this. What made you specifically want to go ahead and just only do this aspect? I know you talked about obviously, okay, doing it yourself and everything like that. What made you now kind of
Yeah.
dive more into like, okay, 5 months ago, like, hey, I'm going to do this for other people in this space, in this niche. What made you do that?
Yeah. I wish I could tell you that I had this grand 5 or 10 year plan. I didn't. I actually decided to invest in my own coach training starting in the beginning of this year. I started training with a school called Alethea, which has been a phenomenal experience. And as I was getting into the coaching and being coached, I started telling people about what I was doing and explaining to them some of the things that I was experiencing as someone that was being coached as well as coaching. And then someone said, well, I'd love to experience that. And I said, cool, I'll set up a call. And they said, well, I'd like to pay you. And I looked and I said, okay, well, I guess I should start a business. I mean, there was always an intention to start a business, but I didn't really expect it to take this form this fast. So it really started with an invitation from someone to offer me money in exchange for my skills. And then it just started snowballing from there. And this person was in tech and was a leader in tech and had that profile. And I recognized so much of my younger self in that person too. And so it's kind of working backwards. I think oftentimes people go into coaching and they have this idea of the type of person that they want to work with. And sometimes the actual people that you end up supporting will tell you, oh, this is the person that I can really help. So it's working backwards from those conversations instead of my preconceived notion about who I could help. It's not quite as popular, say, as coaching C-level people or founders explicitly. That tends to be a common one. But this one really spoke to me from a deep place, and it's been a joy to step into it.
Yeah. So let's say you rewind early this year as you obviously started working with, your coach to help you build it out. And then 5 months ago was more you kind of getting into, your own business through this person. Let's say there's a new coach. They haven't necessarily started their program yet. What would you share with them when it comes to either crafting an ideal client or just maybe getting started? Because as you said, it's like you had a different preconceived notion to now. What would you recommend even to old JJ a couple months ago, whatever it was? Like, what would you share knowing now what you know?
It's going to seem really stupid, maybe a little oversimple. Coach people. I think oftentimes people will wait until they have like the ideal system set up or they've filled in their journal for 6 months and done a lot of reflection and all that. It's going to emerge through conversations. You just invite every person you can who's open to it, to a coaching conversation. You listen. If you're a good coach, you should be listening well anyways. Hold the space, pay attention. And I think what's helped me, and something I would recommend to other folks as well, is have some kind of a mindfulness or meditation practice. It doesn't have to be a formal meditation practice, but some way that you are allowing yourself to become more receptive. Because again, we can fill this space with our preconceived notions of what should be happening, but you really want to take this receptive stance of actually listening to the people and what these situations are telling you. And the more you coach, the more you talk to people, the more you get feedback, the more it starts to become clear. There's this great quote, I think it's attributed to Michelangelo, the sculptor, where he said that he doesn't create the statue from the marble, he reveals the statue that's already inside the marble. And so his work was obviously chiseling, chiseling, chiseling. Your work as a coach is talk to people and really listen to what they have to say and how what they have to say shapes your path forward as a coach.
Yeah. And that's one of the hardest parts, because as coaches, naturally we have this innate desire to want to help people, to want to do that. And there's all these limiting beliefs that also come inside of it too, like, oh, well, am I worthy to go ahead and help someone? And therefore, because of that, we want to make sure we put our best foot forward, right? We want to make sure that everything looks right, because, oh, if this email isn't exactly right, then it might be a bad representation of me, or if my website's not exactly built, or if I don't even have a website. And next thing you know, like you said, you start going down this laundry list of like, okay, you had this idea of becoming a coach, and then now it's 9 months later, you haven't even talked to anyone about being a coach, really. You have like, okay, you got your social media, you're making the motivational posts every day, but it's like, what are the most important things that you need to actually get started with the business? And that's the funny part, because oftentimes, even as I'm walking through different lessons, I like to keep it extraordinarily simple. Right? Albert Einstein says, if you cannot explain it simply, then you do not know it well enough. And that's when you like really have mastery of a subject. Like you said, like, it's not rocket science. Like, if you want to coach, go start coaching people. And I love that message, because so many people, they get in their own way, on many different facets. Let's say people are like, okay, I want to start coaching. I've got maybe one or two people. How do they continue to get more clients, to get in front of people? How are you in your business marketing and getting new leads, new prospects for your coaching business?
Sure. So there's a couple of reframes that I propose when you're thinking about growing a business like this. And I'll also make a comment that a lot of the way I approach this is influenced by Rich Litvin, who you and your other listeners may be familiar with. He's an incredible coach in the space, and he wrote a book called The Prosperous Coach. I think he published that in 2013 or 2016, somewhere in that range. And that's where he talks about the business side of coaching, not just the skills of coaching, but how to actually grow a business. And one of the things that he says that I've really internalized is that you don't get clients, you create clients.
Mm.
And you create clients through conversation. So the same way that I have created clients or invited clients into my practice to start is the number one way that I will continue to create clients as my business grows. Talk to people, connect with them, get to know them, hold an agenda loosely. The goal is not to convert or pitch. People can smell the salesy stuff from a mile away. If you have a genuine intention to serve them, you will know in that moment, especially if you've honed that receptivity skill, when it's appropriate to invite them into a deeper conversation that can involve the exchange of money. And I think if a person was willing to actually discipline themselves to only do that, either be in conversations where they're connecting with people that's not paid or actually serving their clients powerfully, then they could grow a great coaching practice. A lot of people won't do that because we live in modern digital marketing, which I have a lot of background in. And so we start thinking about the websites, the social media, the funnels, paid ads, all the things that you can do. But those things can be a distraction from the thing that you're actually here to do, which is talk to people, hold space, and be someone that's supporting them as they're changing their lives. And so that's kind of the first rung. Now, there's another aspect to the way I approach this because education is very important to me. And so I'm really trying to spread a different paradigm of how to approach personal transformation and growth. And so I do a lot of writing and a lot of creating. So I am building a website. I do have social media. I do participate in podcasts like this. There's a communication element to what I'm doing. And I'm sure that's going to lead to more people that I can invite into my practice. But the number one thing I do is talk to people, make sure they understand what it is I do, and hold the intention to not get them, convert them, pitch them, throw that out the window, just serve them right now as if they were a paid client. And you'd be surprised at what unfolds.
Yeah. One thing that I notice a lot of coaches, they have in their head because you have, yes, I'm in this business because I want to serve people, because I'm passionate about this. In the same sense, though, a lot of coaches, they're worried, oh, if I give too much away, then they don't want to go ahead and work with me. Or I don't want to give away my secret sauce, especially if they're making any sort of content on YouTube. What are your thoughts on that? And what's your philosophy behind doing that?
If a coach is struggling with that, they need to get a coach, period. Because that's an internal limitation. That's a scarcity mindset. That's coach saying, if I give too much away, I won't get back. And look, I get it because I have my own stuff that I have to work through about receiving what wants to come back to me. If I give too much away, or if I give, I won't get back. So I say this from a place of compassion. I get it. But if you are really serving people with that intention to be helpful, if they like you, if they're feeling the resonance of what you're putting out there and it is assisting them, when they're ready, they're going to want to keep going. Or if they recognize that I've consumed all this guy's content on YouTube and I'm at a place, but I feel like there's still something blocking me or holding me back, maybe it is time to explore something deeper, then you can do so. Yeah, I think explore what that is, because there may be something deeper there. I totally understand the hesitation to give away the secret sauce. Here's the thing, as a coach, you are the product. And if anyone is going to invest in coaching with you, they need to know you, trust you, like you. And the more you can share and connect through your content or however you're putting yourself out there, the more they can build that trust. And that's the most important thing. Coaching is nothing without trust. Nobody has a coaching budget. It's one of my favorite things that I've heard. People budget for groceries, their mortgage, their cars. They budget for fun, they budget for other stuff, but no one sits down in 2024 year planning and says, how much are we going to spend on coaching this year? Doesn't happen, guaranteed. Talk to a person on the street. You have a coaching budget? Absolutely not. And so they need to really believe that investing in you is going to significantly change their lives.
And what are the best ways? Obviously, we've talked about making content, of doing all that, and not one of the big things too is that people put out content, but it's like, I'm only going to give this much because I'm afraid to go ahead and give it away. So then they give away their the sucky fluff, you know, the stuff that's like the little teaser, and then that's what they're going to judge you based off of, right?
Yeah.
So coming back to it, you mentioned, okay, you got to convey your value to the other person on the other end. We talked about obviously making content online and things along those ends, not just giving away the sucky fluff, but genuinely seeking to help people. What are some other things that you do in your business and that you recommend to help convey that value to the prospects on the other side of, whether it be a sales call, whether it be just in general, like a lead list? What are some things that you do?
So my systems are very simple. Every week I have a kind of review process for what I'm going to use my time with. And I have a business coach that I work with that he holds an intention with me. I make sure that my calendar is filled with connections. I'm going to sound really repetitious with a lot of this stuff. You'd be shocked at how little I track in terms of leads, funnels, all that stuff, because again, that could be nice, but it takes me away from the number one purpose that I'm here to do, which is build relationships. This comes back to the whole fluff thing with content. The purpose of content is not to give someone value, it's to build a relationship. Everything that I do is about building a relationship, because ultimately the relationship is where transformation happens. And so you can give someone information, but we're not at a loss for information in the internet age. And if you're a coach, congratulations, you're in an industry that is flooded with tons of people who may or may not have any experience, formation, training, or validation of their ability to hold that space. And yet they have hung up their shingle and they've called themselves a coach and they've started reporting on YouTube because anyone can do it. And so the activities that I pursue, whether it's the content creation, networking, whatever the case may be, it's all in pursuit of building a relationship. So something I haven't talked about that I explicitly do as a business growth activity is networking. And I think this is a really key component as well. Oftentimes we kind of divide our activities between the things we're doing for our clients and the things we do to get clients. I spend a lot of my time just on building relationships with other people who I may never work with. And this comes back to the scarcity mindset, because I think sometimes people feel like, well, if I'm investing this time in people that may never work with me, then I may be limiting myself. I could be using that time in a better way. I could be doing more marketing, whatever. But there's a beautiful thing that happens when you cultivate an ecosystem, right? Because it's not just you. A great example is I had a call earlier with someone who's a trauma therapist. They have a background in working with people somatically through trauma. Now, my practice is trauma informed, which means we are aware that trauma can exist in the conversation, and people have stories. Unfortunately, some have experienced more than others, so we don't ignore that, but we also don't go so deeply into it that they can become overwhelmed. And so my space is not a space to process big trauma. And so what's valuable to me are having next steps for people who may have that in their story that my space is not a good space for. And so I had this great conversation with someone who's now in my referral network, who, if I have a client who has needed that support, they're going to be the first person that I send that client to. And so now we're helping each other build our businesses, because this person also knows what I do and understands the people that I support and is also extremely well networked. And so I could see that come back to me. I don't depend on it. I don't rely on it, but it's an intention to build mutually beneficial relationships across disciplines, across different fields, because you really don't know what cool things can happen when you build relationships with the intention to serve. And so that's another thing that I would definitely recommend. I've already felt the impact of that this early in, and I just feel like I'm getting started.
Yeah. And when you say building relationships and networking, what are some of the primary mediums that you like to go to establish those relationships and network with people?
LinkedIn, 100%. If I gave someone a recommendation for any platform to invest in that's interested in doing this kind of work, I would recommend starting with LinkedIn. It can be very tempting to spread yourself thin across multiple platforms. I think when you're getting started, it's skillful to start with one, maybe two, and drill in deeply to building an engaged audience through your content there, showing up, showing who you are. The great thing about LinkedIn as a platform is it really rewards you interacting with other people. So the other thing I would recommend if someone were to approach that platform with the intention of building a network is focus less on your own content and focus on really adding appreciation and value to other people's content. Because everyone wants to be visible on these platforms, right? It's part of the social media game. And if you show up, really pay attention to what they're saying, and then add something thoughtful that creates even more value to what they're putting out there, they're going to want to build a relationship with you. And by the way, you're a coach. And so your ability to see, hear, and feel someone, reflect back what they're communicating, and offer something that's helpful is literally what you do. You can demonstrate that in the comment sections of other people's content, which is a wild thing. And by the way, LinkedIn rewards you for doing that. And so that would be something that I'd really encourage people to take a look at. But again, always with the service mentality, never with the get mentality, always with the service mentality. And that has been huge. LinkedIn has changed my life, no question. And not just professionally, but I've met some incredible friends on that network too, who support me even now in building my business. So that's definitely somewhere I'd start. Don't underestimate just going to in-person events as well. That kind of network is not dead. In fact, it's really coming back post-COVID. And just doing things that you're interested in and meeting people that have common ground. And again, you never know where those connections can lead and how you can build ways to support each other mutually.
Yeah. You mentioned service, and one of the biggest mental roadblocks, especially that coaches face, is selling, because they want to help people, but they have this aversion to, oh, I don't want to take their money, or I don't know, or they charge astronomically low amounts of money. How do you approach sales and the overall sentiment behind you're getting on a call with someone, you're looking to provide value? What is the point where you transition, or like, hey, buy my services? What does that process look like for you?
That's a great question. So the first thing I'll say is that we have a lot of cultural baggage around sales. I think too many people have probably watched Glengarry, Glenn Ross, and see always be closing and think that's what it is. You know, go out there and get something from people, right? That's the message. And you see it in a lot of corporate culture as well. I've worked with a bunch of sales teams through the years and worked in some consulting myself. So I understand the pressure to be able to meet certain metrics and targets, and the temptation to use really strong outbound approaches to try to meet those goals. The problem with that, with coaching and staying within a service-based environment, is that people, especially these days, can smell that a mile away. I mean, I don't know about you, and I don't know about anyone else who's watching. My inboxes are slammed. They're slammed. Everyone's getting in the lead gen game. And that's fine. There's some businesses that's totally appropriate. There's really mindful, excellent ways to do outbound. I'm definitely not bashing that at all. I'm just saying that that mentality, I think, doesn't work for me in this business. So in terms of the nuts and bolts, number one, I said before, get a coach if you feel like you can't charge money, because you could have some internal stuff that's happening around your own self-worth and self-value. But understanding that if you're just getting into the game, you're probably not going to be able to charge as much as someone else that's got a track record and, you know, help their clients achieve good outcomes and has the social proof and testimonials to prove visibly that they can do that. As coaches, we have the burden to prove that we can actually do what we say we can do. It's very different if you're a therapist. You obviously go through rigorous training and certification, but I've never looked up a Google review for a therapist before. Usually what's happening is you go on a directory and you figure out what it is you want to work through, and then you call them up, do an intake session, and off you go. We play a different game. We really have to be able to show that we're providing value. So I will know my offerings, I will know my value, I will have my numbers in my head already. I know what I charge. And if I feel weird saying it out loud, I practice in the mirror with another person. I charge X, I charge Y for this much. I charge this much for 3 months, 8 sessions. Know it. Do not go into a call not knowing those things. And again, if that brings up the, you know, that anxiety that comes in, that's something to work through as well. And in those conversations, I really just focus on becoming present and serving and sensing. Is it appropriate to invite them to a deeper conversation? If it is, I'll know. There's not a framework. I do not have a 5-step process. It's not a thing. I pay attention to the person in front of me. I get to know them. I get to know their story. I connect with them. I serve them as if they were already my client. And if it is appropriate, and I will sense it, I will invite them to something deeper. Usually a first coaching conversation, I probably will not charge them for it. This is as much for my benefit as it is for their benefit. Because I also need to know if I'm going to be a person that can help them. Just because they can pay me doesn't mean they should. And so it's like a chemistry read, like 2 actors on a set. Like, do we actually have chemistry? Is the big kissing scene actually going to work for this thing? We'll do a chemistry read, and then I will tell them, I don't send them an email and then say, hey, get back to me whenever. No, in the call, have the conversation. Yes, it will be uncomfortable. Yes, it gets easier with practice, but the discomfort never goes away. In the call, I tell them, this is what it looks like to work with me. I'd love to support you. What do you think? Oh, that'd be awesome. Cool. Ding, ding, ding. Let's do it. We're off to the races. So excited to support you. I'll send you a contract. We'll schedule the first session. Let's run. I need some time to think about it. Okay. I will follow up with you after X days. Okay. I will lead this conversation. I'm not going to wait for them, watch my email inbox. Oh, are they going to email me back? They probably won't. Not because they're mean, but because they're busy adults. They've got lives, you know? I assume that they're busy, and I assume that I'm a luxury for them, not a necessity. So I will set a time to follow up with them. I will communicate when to expect that follow-up if I haven't heard back from them. And then if it's not a fit or it's not a go, leave them alone. And that's it. And then we move on to the next conversation.
One thing that I really enjoy about your whole philosophy is it's all value driven. It's not hard sell, let me slam it down your throat, or let me use some manipulative tactic to try to weasel my way into getting you to say yes and giving the money. It's like, no, look, I'm here to serve. I'm here to give value. And that's one of the biggest things that just as a whole, this industry, because it's not like everyone is like that, but it gets such a bad rap because you have a couple of bad actors that go ahead and just, they don't care about client systems. They don't care about all these different things. And even as you said before, people, unless they understand the value that you can provide, will never be able to do that. Because there's so many coaches that probably feel the same exact way to what you're describing right now. Look, I'm not big on trying just to go ahead and like slam something down someone's throat. I just want to help them and do that. And maybe they don't have the understanding of, okay, here's what I do on step 1. I provide value, and then I come here and then I have an initial session. And then I say, hey, this is what it would look like to move whatever it is. They maybe don't have that framework, number 1, and number 2, they don't have the visibility. So it's a matter of go ahead and start having conversations. And something that was really powerful that you said is in the beginning, you're talking about specifically going for the close, right? Asking for the money. You said in the beginning, it's going to be awkward. It's going to be weird, but it gets easier over time. And that's one of the biggest things also with coaches and outreach and everything. It's something I'm sure it's a weird feeling, right? And then it's like, okay, yeah, no, this is just what I do. And I'm here to serve rather than, oh, I'm trying to go ahead and take your money, right? So
yeah, it's a value exchange. I mean, look, sales, has been around since human beings have been collaborating since the dawn of time, right? Like we've found ways, whether it's bartering or there's some actual currency involved. I have a thing that I can provide for you. In order for me to provide that thing, I need to invest in a certain amount of training time and resources to do so. I will provide this thing for you if you provide that thing for me in the form of money, right? It's economics. If you look at it from that perspective, it can be very neutral, but we have a lot of emotions and psychology tied into this. And that's why sometimes the loudest voices are the ones that give the industry the worst rap, because they're often transitioning from those types of close-oriented sales backgrounds. And there aren't as many people investing in this more sort of service-oriented approach and then visibly talking about it. And so you don't hear about those approaches as much. So you kind of believe that that's the way it's done. Coaching is a luxury, not a necessity. It's very different from marketing, I don't know, a grocery store, just as an example, a tangible product or good that becomes a necessity. I've joked around with people that if I really wanted an easy business to build, I should have become a plumber. It's literally a public health good, never going away. There's almost always a shortage. The training is extremely accessible. Heck, if coaching's not working out for you, go be a plumber. Plenty of opportunities, never going away. You'll make awesome money. Fantastic, right? And worldwide, plumbers are needed. But I think as a coach, if you don't embrace the value of relationships, like if you genuinely don't enjoy talking to people and supporting them and making that the center of your vocation, then you're probably here for the lifestyle that you think this profession can give you. And I would seriously ask questions before you invest too much in that path, because it's not easy. People fail all the time. They get burned out. They try all the things and nothing works. And then they end up back at square one. And so I think at the end of the day, the intention, like the deeply sourced desire to be a space where people can grow and become better, healthier versions of themselves and really live the lives that they imagine, step into a field of possibilities. If you can do that for someone and see the change on their face, and that's what gets you up every day, then you're on the right path. And then it's growth, it's not sales. It's invitations, it's not closing. It's just a different paradigm of looking at it.
Yeah. You hit a really key point in my eyes of people wanting the lifestyle or they think they like it versus really going to the core of what you just said. Are you passionate about helping people get to that next level, become the best version of themselves? And is that something that lights you up? Because of course you can make money with something you're not passionate about. It makes it a lot more difficult. You're fighting an uphill battle every single day. And in my experience, it is much easier and better to go do something that you're passionate, where you don't feel like you're working, right? Like this, I'd have this type of conversation all day, every day. Yes, it's a part of my business, the Coaching Uncovered podcast, but if we were just sitting down at dinner together, we'd probably have very similar conversations. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, what are you, hey, same sort of
We'd
stuff.
go for hours. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
For sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one thing that I do want to go ahead and make sure we say as we go ahead and wrap up, first of all, this has been awesome. As you just said, I could probably talk more and more for hours. For people that are interested in learning more about you, your coaching, or just even connecting and networking, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you went ahead and covered, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Right now, the best way to do so is to go to linkedin.com, do a search for JJ, two J's, Vega, Vega. That's the name. You'll find me. I'm pretty active on there. You can also shoot me an email, art of unfolding, 3 words, all put together, at gmail.com. Working on the website, that'll be launched when it's ready. It's definitely not a process that I'm rushing. And eventually I may expand to other channels, but LinkedIn is absolutely the #1 way to connect with me. And I'm happy to network. I'm happy to support, send me a direct message. If you are someone that's trying to even figure out if this is the right thing for you and you want to have a conversation, I will jump into a call with you and we can go back and forth. So happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, JJ, this has been great. I appreciate you hopping on, and I'm sure we'll be chatting more soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. It's been wonderful.
Awesome. Okay, so everyone, that is going to go ahead and wrap up our episode for today with JJ. I hope that you were able to get as much value as I did from this, where we talk about leading with service, right? We talk about going ahead and making sure you're putting yourself in front of the right people, networking, not trying to have all of these small little details of your coaching business get in the way of you doing the most important thing. And that is having the conversations, that is building the relationships and just genuinely seeking to help people. So with that said, if you are not subscribed, make sure you go ahead and subscribe and go ahead and stay tuned for future episodes. And we will see you guys very soon.